Good evening. My name is John H., and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar, we're going to go through the recovery section of the Big Book line by line. We are going to take the action that our founders and the first 100 people who recovered say that we must do to overcome this seemingly hopeless condition of mind and body. Now, I don't claim to be any kind of a big book and 12-step guru or expert, not by any means. I am no kind of deep spiritual advisor. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple of recovered alcoholics reached out their hand to me and said, "We have a different way." Now, this is based on the Canadian method pioneered by the Golden Slippers, but I also borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes, from Chuck C., from Clancy, and from all of the giants upon whose shoulders we are riding. Now, I would love it if you could grab a couple of friends and listen to these sessions together, because working the steps with other people is always more powerful than trying to go through them alone. So you're going to need a large print big book, a highlighter, and a pen, and some willingness. And as you guys will see, we open every session with a set-aside prayer to more open our mind to be more receptive to this information. Thank you so much for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now deceased, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Amen. All right, welcome, guys. The first time I went through one of these Code Blues, the fella, right when we got to the 4th step, he said, "All right, this is where the rubber really hits the road." And of course, being a good alcoholic, wanted to get up and hit him. I got angry just because he said that, and I was a very angry and resentful person, and I didn't really realize how resentful and how much anger and fear and eventually guilt and shame played a role in my life until I did the 4th step. Once I did the 4th step, I think more than anything in my life, that changed me, right? It basically, what it did is it helped me to see the truth and how I'd been showing up in my life. It helped me to see that I had been playing the victim card most of my life and blaming other people for my woes and my problems and the things that were going on, because it was always their damn fault, right? So this really opened my eyes, and a lot of things happen even in sobriety, right? And I mean, I can get angry and resentful even in sobriety, but now I can see why I'm getting angry, and I can see what's going on, and I can also see that when I become angry and resentful, I'm usually wrong, and there's usually something that's not quite right with me, right? There's no guarantee that I'm going to get to go the rest of my life without ever taking another drink. But I think after doing this, I'm not going to be able to play the victim card like I used to in the past. So this really is where the rubber hits the road, I must say. So I'm going to probably be all over the board today. I was really busy. I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare, but I think we'll do just fine. So let's go to. So does everybody have the paperwork, by the way? Did everybody get everything from up here? Okay, so, the first thing, we're on page 64, and, the first thing I always like to cover is when should we do the 4-step? When do we do it, right? Some people say, wait a year, get sober a year, so your head is together. There was one professional in the field that advised people to wait a full 2 years before they did a 4-step. And my question to that professional is, how many people did he kill by having them wait that long? Our book tells us right here, at the top of page 64, it says, though our decision was a vital and crucial step, and they're talking about step 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. Though it was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. So according to the book, we're going to do the 4-step immediately after we do step 3. That's right away. That's now. That doesn't mean that we wait. And, for me, and many of you know my history, that I came in and out of these rooms for 20 years, and I always would relapse. 1 month, 2 months, I take steps 1, 2, 3, drink, 1, 2, 3, drink. It's the 1, 2, 3 shuffle. Right? Now, and I thought that I might have done a 4-step a while ago, but what I did is I wrote, a little bit further in the book, it says, until we told somebody all our life story. So I thought that a 4-step was writing down all of the dirty, rotten, filthy things that I'd done in my life and that I was ashamed of. Well, that's not it at all, because I already know those. What we're going to do is we're going to try to discover new information about ourselves, right? It tells us there are things which are blocking us off from our decision in step 3 to let God be the director, right? And just plain old to let God into our lives. It says our liquor was but a symptom. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. Okay, so we're going to discover all kinds. I got to tell you guys, I discovered so much new information when I was doing this, my 4-step. I couldn't believe it. It really opened my eyes to the way I'd been living my life. So we do step 4 right away. That means at once, because otherwise we're going to probably drink again. Now, why don't people do the 4-step right away? One of the big reasons is they're afraid to do it, right? And I mean, I might even be guilty of this, and because some of us older members in AA, we say, wait till you get to your 4-step, boy, but that's not it at all. We play King on the Mountain, and we get people afraid, and we can't do that, because if they don't do the 4-step, they're probably going to use again. They're going to drink, they're going to use drugs, and they might die. So knowing that we might get drunk if we don't do the 4-step, if you're not afraid enough, what's the other reason? Well, I think the other reason is confusion, right? People have been putting out 4-step guides. One had 10 pages, another one had 20 pages. I heard of one 4-step guide that had 40 pages, right? I mean, what we've got to do is we've got to follow the simple instructions in the book. And though I'm handing out some paperwork up here, you're going to see that what I'm giving you is the blank form for page 65. So I'm not doing anything that isn't in this book, right? And when we get to Mr. Brown, I'm sure many of you read that and didn't understand the Mr. Brown stuff. You're going to see that what I handed out is simply the blank form of page 65. So yeah, I'm going to tell everybody right now that if you do this step according to the big book, there is nothing whatsoever to fear. Absolutely nothing. And there's everything to gain. One of my sponsors, actually a couple of people that helped me out, both of them, what they did is they wrote out that life story. And they read that life story to another person. And again, that was old information, so they didn't learn anything new, and it didn't help them. I guess one guy told me that it helped him a little bit because he can confess some things to another person that he had never told another soul, and he said that helped him a little bit. He said the other thing that helped him is when they talked about the 4-step in meetings, he could say, I did it, even though what he did wasn't really the 4-step. So it didn't really help him at all. And a lot of people think, hey, it's a list of dirty, rotten, nasty things. And what Bill said is he said it's a moral inventory. Bill Wilson had a pretty good grip on the English language. If he wanted a list of dirty, rotten, filthy things, he would have said, I want you to do an immoral or amoral inventory, but he didn't. He said, I want you to do a moral inventory. Moral simply means truth. Right? Things as they really are, the right and wrong of any given situation, the truth about things, right? So a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, he compares it to a book, or to a business. I guess I'll read a little bit. Let's go to page 64. And we're right under where we would have written stop week 7. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. Okay, highlight, this was step 4. So highlight personal inventory and highlight this was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory, highlight, is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. Keep highlighting. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. You can stop highlighting there. Off to the left, we're just going to write truth. We're going to write truth. That's all we're going to look at. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly, circle honestly, okay, and then highlight the next sentence. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Highlight that sentence. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. So underline common manifestations, and we're going to write resentment, fear, guilt, shame, and remorse. Resentments, fears, guilt, shame, and remorse. Right? Some of the common manifestations that we're going to look at. So, let's see here. Does everybody have that sheet about the business? We'll take a quick look at this sheet about... This is an inventory comparison because Bill is going to compare our searching and fearless moral inventory. He's going to compare that with a business taking an inventory. So, I work at a place where we sell products, right? And when we do an inventory is not a history of when the business was founded and who founded it and how they expanded, in their history. That's not what the inventory is at all. Right? The inventory is a fact-finding, fact-facing truth about the stock in trade, about what we're going to sell to keep us in business. So the step uses the word searching, fearless, and moral to describe our personal inventory. When Bill says searching, he means the same thing as fact-finding. When he says fearless, he means the same thing as fact-finding. When he says moral, he just means true. So we are going to make a fact-finding, fact-facing, truthful written inventory of our personal stock and trade, just as we would if we were inventorying a business that we wanted to run profitably. Ourselves are the stock and trade, right? So, some of the words for fearless, everybody, and I had one guy, he said, John, I'm terrified of doing this. I can't do a fearless moral inventory. I'm terrified. Well, let's look at some definitions of fearless. It means bold, daring, resolute, undaunted, brave, gutsy. Right? That's what it means. That means that we are going to do something irregardless of the fear. When somebody has bravery, they do the act through their fear. That's what makes them brave. If they're not afraid, they're just plain stupid. Right? Now some of the antonyms are timid and cowardly. Right? So we don't want to be that. We want to be resolute, bold, and daring. Right? And what we want to do is we want to find new facts. Right? New facts, and we want to face them. And again, if we write our life story, we're not going to find out anything new in there. So if we do that, we get a little bit of a confession. And confession is good for the soul, but that's not going to keep us sober. If confession kept us sober, there would be no Catholics in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Some of the definitions, and I just love this, resentment, I got a couple definitions. One guy said resentment is me not getting my way in the past, right? He said depression is me not getting my way now. And he said fear is he's worried that I won't get my way in the future, right? Those are three good things. But another three definitions I really like. Resentment are simply incorrect judgments of other people. Fear, simply incorrect perception of what's going on, right? We perceive things incorrectly. You've heard people say that this is a disease of perception. And the wrongs that we do others is simply incorrect treatment of other people, right? So what we're going to do, like if a guy's running a business and he got a great deal on some purses from the early 90s, and he's got those purses on all these big displays all over his stores, and nobody's buying any of these purses. And this guy is saying, but I got it such a good deal and I'm getting them such a good price. They just don't know what's good for them. Well, this guy is fooling himself about the stock and trade of what he's got there. And if he doesn't get rid of those purses that are taking up valuable floor space and they're not selling, and put something there that is going to sell to make money, this guy's going to go out of business, right? And it's the kind of the same for us. So searching fearless moral inventory of ourselves, we are the only stock and trade that we have in this business of staying sober, right? And nobody can make us drink. Right? I know a lot of you guys might say, well, they make me plenty thirsty, but nobody can make us drink. We decide when we're going to drink. So what we're going to do is we are going to find the flawed thinking processes that block us off from God. Right? When we find these flawed thinking processes, and we're going to try to get rid of them. So we made a decision, right? We made a decision for God to direct us. We did it last week, right? We all got down and we took that third step, right? But if our minds are filled with damaged and unsaleable goods in the form of resentments, fears, and guilt, shame, and remorse, God cannot get through that crap. He simply can't. Now, when these things are gone, God can enter our head, right? The processes are resentment, fear, guilt, shame, and remorse. So I love, many of you know and maybe have heard the Joe and Charlie. He talks about an illusion where his head is a 7-Eleven store. Right? And I love this because this was me. My head is a little 7-Eleven store. Not much in there, never has been, right? But I've got a display case in my little 7-Eleven head, and that display case is filled with resentments. Damn him, damn her, they can't do that to me. They don't know who the hell they're dealing with. Right? God can't get through that crap. When that stuff is running around in my head, God is not going to get through there. I've got a file cabinet over in the corner. That file cabinet is full of fears. Oh my God, what's she going to do when she finds out? Oh my God, I don't have the money to cover that check. Oh my God, I'm going to get fouled. My God, God can't get through that stuff either, man. So we got to get rid of that stuff. And then we've got a storeroom in the back, and that storeroom is chock full of guilt, shame, and remorse, right? I'm the worst son. I'm the worst employee. How could I have done that? I'm the worst boyfriend or spouse. Oh my God, I'm the worst friend on earth, the worst father, the worst mother. Oh, I'm so horrible. Man, God can't get through that stuff either, right? So we got to get rid of this stuff. We talked about how God, we can find God deep down within every man, woman, and child. So God's within us, but He cannot overcome all that calamity and noise that is going on in our heads, man. If I want God to direct my thinking, I'm going to have to do something about the resentments, the fear, and the guilt, shame, and remorse so God can enter. Right? Now, if I can do my part, and I can get rid of the resentments and the fears and the guilt, shame, and the remorse, and we do that through the working of the steps, God can then come in and direct me. Right? But until I do the work, God can't get in there, and I am going to go back to drinking. It's just that simple, right? Now, if we can get rid of this stuff, I was worried, well, all of these things are what make me John. If I get rid of them, oh my God, I'm not going to be the same guy. Well, nature abhors a vacuum. So when we get rid of the bad stuff, the good stuff is going to start to flow in. I'm going to read something from the 12 and 12. Bill talks about this. He wrote the 12 and 12 several years after the Big Book. So he's talking about going through this process. And few muddled attitudes have caused us more trouble than holding back on the stuff that we're about to do. Some people are unable to stay sober at all, right, if they don't do this. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. And some people can stay sober. He says even AA old-timers sober for years often pay dearly for skimping this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered of irritability, anxiety, remorse, and depression, and how unconsciously seeking relief, they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people, right? Everybody has to confess his own. Remember last week we talked about that, you spot it, you got it. It's easy for us to see our flaws in other people and say, look at that guy over there, right? He's doing that, right? But we can't see it when we're doing it ourselves because we're fooled by our judgment. Because our judgment, when we have judgments, we're helping everybody out because, we're just, that's the kind of people we are, right? So let's go back to the book. We're going to highlight this next sentence. This is a big one, right? Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. So Bill's telling us that resentment kills more alcoholics than anything else. That's what brings us back to drinking more than anything. I used to think it was maybe my guilt, shame, and remorse based upon the things that I had done, but I learned that no, it was my resentment. So next to that sentence we highlighted, you can write, in Latin means to refeel. Means to refeel. Anytime you see the word re, it means to do again. And senti, I think, is Latin, means to feel. So what we're going to do is we're going to re-feel something, right? From it, wait till everybody's got that written. So in Latin, it means to re-feel. I guess under that you can write body/mind spiritually sick. Body/mind spiritually sick. You ever notice how when you're carrying around a load of resentments that you got this feeling in the pit of your stomach and it just is not good? You might feel smugly superior than the people you're working with these resentments, but in the pit in your stomach you just don't feel good. From it stem all forms of spiritual Dis-ease. Put a line between dis and ease. Dis-ease. He calls it spiritual disease, but it's dis-ease. We are so uneasy. We're filled with anxiety, depression. Just we're uneasy, right? For we have been not only mentally and physically ill. We're going to highlight the next 4 lines. We have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Keep highlighting one more sentence. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Okay, so we're going to go up a couple lines, and when the spiritual, by spiritual put 1, just put a 1 by the spiritual. So if we can take care of our spiritual malady, we're going to straighten out, put a 2 in front of mentally, and then put a 3 in front of physically. I used to think I had better get straightened out physically and mentally first, right? But no, I was doing it backwards. I mean, that's why it never worked. So we've got to get rid of this spiritual disease, and then all of a sudden our mental acuity is going to come back. We're going to be able to get along with people that we didn't before, and we're going to be able to get along with ourselves. And then, of course, our physical health, because when we have unease in our body and we're feeling all this anger and this hatred, we are definitely physically in bad shape. So an inventory, by the way, to go back to our inventory comparison sheet, a business inventory is a written list of items, right? It's a written list. So some people think they can do this in their head, and they're fooling themselves. So it says right here, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So next to that sentence and to the rest of the page, we're going to write 4th step instructions. So we're going to get some instructions right here. The first of which is in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Okay. The next one is we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. That's another instruction. We asked ourselves, next to that one, write column 1. Okay, that's column 1. I am resentful at. Everybody's got that sheet, right? We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. That's the first column. Now, some people say, well, I'm really not resentful at anybody. Well, then, I was taught, who do you think you're smugly superior then? Right? Because if you don't think you're angry, then go with the second one. But, we alcoholics have been sitting on bar stools telling everybody who we're resentful at for years, so that should be pretty easy for us. So we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Put column 2 by that. Okay, so column 2, the cause, right there on that sheet that I gave you. Column 2, in most cases it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were burned up. So that's column 3. Affects what part of self is affected, right? So again, that paperwork that I'm giving you guys is the blank form for page 65. So I'm not giving you anything. I'm not giving you one of those 40-page inventory pamphlets that's going to make you crazier than before you started it. Now, at the bottom of 64, we're going to write something at the bottom of the page. Write, must work on this, stay diligent. So, must work on this, stay diligent. The way we're going to lay this out is we are going to be done, and quite frankly, guys, most people can probably get their 4-step done in a couple of nights. But, and if you're in danger of drinking, I would recommend hooking up with your sponsor and doing this a lot quicker. We're going to have our 4-step done in 4 weeks. So 2 weeks from now, I'm going to ask everybody to set an appointment with their sponsor to do their 5th step. And I know when it was put to me that way and I made the appointment, I got everything done. And it kind of pushed me a little bit. So stay diligent, must work on this. We were sore, we were burned up. Let's see here. Okay. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Highlight. The next three little lines. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? Okay, so again, and I'm going to run columns so you guys understand. Because I read Mr. Brown for years and I had no idea what the hell this was all about. None. I'm going to run some columns and hopefully it'll become a little bit more clear to you. By the way, resentment, okay? Now, let's say a resentment is to refeel, right? If I'm out back and I'm working on a window and I got a hammer in my hand and I bang my finger and I go, ah, and I curse at the hammer and I throw the hammer down and I've got some anger at what just happened. I mean, that's a normal reaction, right? But I am not going to be thinking about that hammer every night for the next 6 weeks saying that son of a bitchin' hammer, right? So here's what a resentment is, right? Let's say that my boss yells at me, right? I'm at work. Maybe I did something, maybe not. And I'm talking to somebody, maybe dealing with a customer, and he comes on and goes, what the hell did, and he yells at me in front of some other people. Now, my natural reaction is I'm angry. And that's natural. There's nothing wrong with that, because I think even if I did something, I'm talking with somebody else and he does it, that's still a wrong on his part. So I have a natural inclination, it's okay that I'm angry. Okay, here's the problem. The first time my boss did it to me, an hour later, I'm walking into the bathroom and nobody's in the bathroom with me and I'm going, that son of a bitch! Right? And now, so the first time he did it to me, the second time I did it to myself. I get home from work that night, right? Hey, John, how was your day? Well, that son of a bitchin' butt. I'm reliving it again, right? So here I am at midnight in my bed and I'm not sleeping because I'm thinking of what this guy did to me, right? So I am reliving this little situation that happened over and over. And some of these things could have happened to us when we were kids that we still think about, right? The problem with resentments is we can only see one at a time. We can only have one resentment chugging through our head at a time. That's why we've got to get them on paper. We got to get them on paper, right? Now, I have discovered that I'm not always completely honest with myself, right? Unfortunately, I'm not always. I can fool myself pretty good. So when I replay a resentment over and over, each time I replay the resentment, what he did to me gets a little bit worse. The harm done me that I feel gets a little bit deeper. And whatever I might have done to cause that in the first place gets a little bit less. So when I play these resentments over and over and over, I convinced myself that I was standing there doing nothing when this son of a bitch came along and laid it on to me. It's all his fault. I'm a victim, right? So we play these over and over. We change them. They change. So any resentments that we have in our head, even if they're justified resentments, by the way, justified resentments are going to get you drunk just the same as unjustified resentments, right? They're not true. I don't care. Whatever it is, we played it over and over again. Those resentments change and they're not true anymore. When I play a resentment in my head over and over again, it comes back as self-resentment, right? And I start to be disgusted with myself for letting somebody take advantage of me in that way, right? So now all of a sudden I'm angry at him, but now it's coming back and how could you stand there and take it, right? You're the victim. How could you let him do it? And then all of a sudden, if we play it long enough, it turns into the sickest of all, which is self-pity. Self-pity, man. So these resentments got from I'm hating this guy all of a sudden to self-pity, and the next thing you know, we're drinking. We're drinking again. So we go home. Somebody does something to us. We go home at night. We sit down. We play it over and over in our heads. We blame them, and we make ourselves sick. We make ourselves sick. Now, on a day when nobody picks on us, right, we go out through the day because I always like to make sure I look around because I'm an important guy if somebody's picking on me. I must be pretty important, Dad Burnett. If I go out and nobody picks on me, then what do? I think about what they're thinking about me, right? I mean, it's crazy the crap that we do, right? So let's look at Mr. Brown. Let's see here. Yep, we're going to look at Mr. Brown now. So I imagine that Bill had a lot more resentments than this, but I don't think he wanted to spend any more space in the big book. So, and we're going to go back and look at those instructions again. We were usually as definite as this example. I am resentful at Mr. Brown. Okay, so the cause. Now, when we do the cause, so that's column 1, guys. So what I want everybody to do, you got that sheet, you're going to make a bunch of copies of that, and you can grab all of these. Everybody grab some more, but you got to make copies. I ended up with, dear Lord, I think I had maybe 20 or 30 of those pages filled out once I really got going on it. So the first column, Mr. Brown. So this is just who I'm resentful at. The next one, the cause. It's got to be something pretty easy. Well, his attention to my wife, told my wife of my mistress, Brown may get my job at the office. Okay, so that's why he's resentful at Mr. Brown. And remember, he's playing this over and over in his head, so it affects a lot of things. So what affects is all of this stuff right here. So it affects my sex relations. His attention to my wife, I mean, we're not getting along. It affects his self-esteem. He's got fear that he might lose his job. Sex relations, self-esteem, his security, right? And fear, self-esteem and fear. Now next he has Mrs. Jones. She's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. So this affects his personal relations, and it affects his self-esteem, and he's got fear because he got committed for drinking. I'm next, right? My employer. I mean, I think everybody's boss better be on this list, man. Even if you got the nicest one in the world, right? Unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking. How dare he? And padding my expense account, right? So that affects our self-esteem and our security. And then, of course, my wife. Normally, for most people, the girlfriend or spouse or whatnot is usually at the top of the list. Misunderstands and nags, right? Just doesn't understand what it's like to be me, man. Won't leave me alone. Likes Brown, wants house put in her name. That affects pride, personal, sex relations, security, and fear. We went back through our lives. Highlight. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. And circle that word honesty again. Okay, so at the bottom of the page, and I know some of you guys might have done a 4th step before, but if you have not really done a completely thorough one according to the book, we're going to write, at the bottom of the page, write everything that left bad taste in mouth since birth. Right? The first one that I ever did, my sponsor had me go back through my life, and he had me write out every resentment that I could ever think about. Now, nowhere in the book does it say that we do another thorough 4th and 5th step, right? Because supposedly we do that in steps 10 and 11, but I don't think that there's any harm in doing another 4th and 5th step, right? As a matter of fact, the first time I did one, I did the best job I could, but I had a relatively inexperienced sponsor. 6 months later, I did a much more thorough one with a more experienced sponsor, and I didn't have to go back to when I was all that other stuff that I had when I was a kid, but I had a lot of big issues that I had missed in that first one that I got out in my second one 6 months later. But if it's the first one, I want everything that's left a bad taste in mouth since birth, right?
So John.
Yeah.
Okay, so like if it's your ex-wife or something like that.
Yeah.
Everything you're resentful for her. I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, we're not going to write out a big book about anything because that's going to make you more angry. So when I run some columns, you'll see how I do it. Okay. But I mean, yes, there might be. So look at Mr. Brown, or look at when he wrote about his wife. He just put misunderstands and nags. Likes Brown. Wants house put in her name. So, some of the big ones, those are 3 different things. I mean, I'm not going to have a list of every little thing. That night that I was out, she did. No. We're going to have just in a few words some broad strokes, right? And when I run a few, we're gonna see what happens. And I really, guys, I'm very sad because my good friend Eric I is not here tonight. He's battling cancer and he's not feeling very good. So with his permission, I am going to try, because he always comes in and runs the first column up there. With his permission, I'm going to do my best to run that column how he does it. If he's feeling better in the next couple of weeks, maybe he'll be able to come in and do it. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. So next to that, write victims. Or write, we think we are victims. We think we are victims. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. That's the self-pity coming at us. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. So, I mean, can you imagine, I talked about that last week, having to be right all the time. What a load of work that is, man. Having judgment of all these other people, that guy isn't doing a very good job. Oh my God, that guy didn't put any money in the basket. Oh, would you look at that guy? He's a phony. He's just in AA to get laid. I mean, we can have all of these this crap going around in our head. And it's harming us. So let's see here. Okay, so what we're going to discover, and again, we can only see one resentment at a time. That's why we've got to put them down on paper. So the instructions, again, right, guys, the instructions, this is very important. These sheets that you have right here, make a bunch of copies of them. So if we look back at instruction number 1, it says we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. Period. So we are going to do this. We're going to do all of our resentfuls first. We're going to do column 1 down. We're not going to go across the page. What we're going to do, I want everybody to carry a little notepad with them. You'll be walking through the grocery store, you'll be looking at a head of lettuce, and you say, my third grade teacher. Write the name down. So we're going to do all of column 1, people that either we think we're superior to, and we're judging them, or that we are resentful at. So we are going to do column 1 first. And what I was taught, the way I did it, my sponsor just had me work on it about a half an hour a night. And you're going to be praying throughout this whole thing, right? Some people, when they start reliving all this stuff, they get a little bit angry. We don't want to do that, right? But we got to get these names on paper. So that's instruction number 1. We asked ourselves why we were angry. So when you've got all of these done, or when you got a lot of them done, you can go back to column 2, the cause. Now the cause should only be, maybe 5 or 6 words, right? So I listed my boss twice, right? So I listed puts me down in front of others, right? And then I have another one, boss, my money. So, and I'll run this one today. In other words, he was getting big bonus checks that I thought I deserved, and I got really mad about that. And there are other ones too. So, but you see how Bill did it here. She just did a few little things. So we do the first column all the way through. We try to get everything that we can. And you can go back through your life. I lived here, and I moved there, and I worked here, and I did this. Right? Then we're going to go and we're going to do the causes, and then one of the big thing that's going to open our eyes is column 3, how this is affecting us. So when we do this, right, we're going to realize that when we're going to start to see patterns. We're going to realize that we're really not angry at the people, right? We're angry at what they did to us. Right? So anybody, when we do this, we're going to see that anybody that would have done that is going to get me upset. It's not the fact that my wife did it. If anybody did it, it would, right? So we're going to, again, 1, how angry. We're going to see that it blocks us off from God. The next thing we're going to realize, it's not them that I resent, but what they've done to me. And then in column 3, we're going to look for threats to our basic instincts of life. Now remember, we're supposed to read about the basic instincts of life last week, and I do have some 12 and 12s if anybody needs to buy them. I remembered to bring my case of books in. Everybody has got to read the 4-step in the 12 and 12 so they understand these basic instincts of life. So remember the basic instincts, my social instinct, right? You know, self-esteem and personal relationships, what people think of me, what I think they think of me. My security instincts, what I need to feel safe and secure. And the sex instinct, right? Those are the 3. And we're going to see that we get angry and resentful when people threaten our basic instincts of life. Now, I used to think that when I got angry, I used to think that I just got angry and that was it. I had to let it run its course, right? But now I understand I only get angry when somebody's threatening one of my basic instincts of life. So if my basic instincts of life are under control and my relationship with God is good, right? Somebody can do something to me that's really bad, right? And I might be a little bit hurt, but it's going to slide off my back and I'm going to say, the poor fella, he must be having a hard day today. Something bad must be going on in his life. Now, if my basic instincts are out of control and I've got a bad relationship with my higher power, the fella can do the exact same thing to me and I can get madder than hell, right? So, let's see here.